In exploring the lives of the prophets, we often encounter stories of unwavering faith and courage.
Yet there's one missionary prophet who stands out for his profound yet troubling journey: Jonah. Despite being a prophet, Jonah's story is marked by an unusual twist of unfaithfulness, yet his legacy has left an indelible mark on history.
Consider this. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, with a clear directive. Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it, for their evil has come up before me.
But instead of heeding the divine command, Jonah chose to flee to Tarshish, seeking to escape the presence of the Lord. He journeyed down to Joppa, found a ship bound for Tarshish, and paid the fare to go with them, determined to evade his prophetic mission. But what led Jonah to defy such a clear command from God?
What was it about Nineveh that made Jonah choose flight over faith? And how does this story unfold from here?
Hello, I'm Linnetta.
I'm Patrick.
And together we are co-founders of
Vertical Connections, Inc.
Thank you for joining us once again. If you are new to this channel, welcome. Everyone, click the like button, the bell icon, and share this message.
Also, we greatly appreciate when you leave comments, and we look forward to those in the future. Let's delve right into the remarkable and unexpected journey of Jonah and discover how his disobedience led to one of the most profound lessons in the Bible.
Jonah is often labeled the reluctant missionary. Disobedience, selfishness, and prejudice. Despite his flaws and poor reputation, even from his own Galilean roots, God chose to use him, offering a glimmer of hope for those who feel inadequate. In fact, Jonah's story is so overlooked that when Jesus presented himself as a prophet from Galilee, people dismissed it, forgetting Jonah entirely.
Wow. But Jonah's story isn't just about a failed prophet. It's a profound lesson on redemption. It highlights the stark contrast between Israel's indifference to the lost and God's deep concern for them. This message remains strikingly relevant today, reflecting the tension between God's unwavering compassion and the church's often superficial concern for the lost.
We are going to divide this book into two parts. The first part is the first missionary call.
In this first missionary call, the commission is a fundamental aspect that sets the stage for Jonah's journey.
Verse 1 and 2. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it, for their evil has come up before me.
In Jonah's time, Israel feared the rising power of Assyria to the east. Despite progress in Israel, the looming threat of Nineveh, which was the Assyrian capital, was ever present.
Nineveh, founded by Nimrod, was a massive city with a 3-day journey from end to end. Wow. Its walls were extensive, 8 miles for the inner wall and about 60 miles for the outer wall. I can't even imagine.
No. Located on the east bank of the Tigris River, it was one of the most advanced cities culturally, but was deeply corrupt. The prophet Nahum condemned it as a bloody city, full of fraud, violence, and idolatry. Noting the wickedness, God sent Jonah to deliver a message of judgment to Nineveh.
So Jonah received the commission, but he disobeys, as we see in verse 3. But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord.
Now, we're unsure which Tarshish Jonah was headed to, but it's likely the one on the coast of Spain, given that Spain is directly opposite Nineveh and over 2,000 miles away. It suggests just how far Jonah was trying to run from his mission.
Jonah ran from God's will by heading in the opposite direction to Tarshish, likely on Spain's coast, as you had mentioned. When asked why, Jonah admitted in chapter 4, verse 2, that he fled because he knew God's nature, gracious, merciful, and quick to forgive. Jonah feared that God would spare Ninevites if he went down there, which he didn't want to happen.
Jonah's reluctance stemmed from his prejudice and belief that the Ninevites deserved judgment, not salvation. His attempt to avoid God's mission mirrors how many followers of Christ today, when called by God, might distract themselves with other pursuits to avoid their true calling.
Instead of directly confronting their mission, they become entangled in other activities, much like Jonah did.
But you see, to run from God is like trying to flee from light. The only thing you wind up with is darkness.
It's like turning your wealth for poverty.
It's like making an exchange of wisdom for ignorance.
It's like turning in joy for sorrow.
And so the commission was met with disobedience.
We see the consequence for Jonah's disobedience in verse 4. But the Lord heralded a great wind upon the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship threatened to break up.
God wasn't done with Jonah. He pursued him with relentless determination, using his immense power to stir up a storm over the Mediterranean. This vivid storm, described in Hebrew as hurled like a javelin, showed that God's pursuit of Jonah was unyielding. No one can escape God's call. He may let someone stray for a while, but he will eventually intervene.
Then verse 5 says, Then the mariners were afraid and each cried out to their God, and they hurled the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to lighten it for them. But Jonah had gone down into the inner part of the ship and had lain down and was fast asleep. In other words, they immediately became religious.
Amidst the tempest, the terrified mariners frantically prayed, and they threw their cargo overboard to lighten the ship, hoping to quell that storm. In stark contrast, Jonah slept peacefully in the hold, seemingly indifferent to the chaos above.
His deep slumber in the face of such peril highlights a troubling spiritual numbness and a misplaced self-assurance, making his detachment from the unfolding crisis all the more unsettling.
We see next that they woke him up as seen in verse 6. So the captain came and said to him, What do you mean, you sleeper? Arise, call out to your God. Perhaps the God will give a thought to us, that we may not perish.
They were praying, and none of their prayers were doing any good. So they figured they needed to get Jonah in on it, as we read in verses 7 and 8.
Absolutely.
And they said to one another, Come, let us cast lots, that we may know on whose account this evil has come upon us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah.
Then they said to him, Tell us on whose account this evil has come upon us. What is your occupation, and where do you come from? What is your country, and what people are you?
When the lot fell on Jonah, the mariners realized he was the cause of the storm. They urgently asked him, Tell us, why has this calamity befallen us?
Amid the chaos of the shaking ship, they fired off rapid questions. What is your occupation?
Where are you from?
What's your country?
What people are you?
Their frantic inquiries aimed to uncover the heart of the problem.
In verse 9, and he said to them, I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. Now that absolutely just flattened them.
In verse 10 and 11, Then the men were exceedingly afraid and said to him, What is this that you have done? For the men knew that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them.
Then they said to him, What shall we do to you, that the seas may quiet down for us? For the sea grew more and more tempestuous.
Jonah could have fallen to his knees and confessed his disobedience, saying, God, I repent, I'm sorry. Instead, his stubbornness, belligerence, and prejudice led him to prefer drowning over going to Nineveh. He would rather face death than witness the Ninevites' salvation.
Negative situations can sometimes soften the heart, but they can also harden one's resolve. Old Jonah, for example, was a tough nut to crack.
Oh, yes, he was.
Here's his answer in verse 12.
He said to them, Pick me up and hurl me into the sea. Then the sea will quiet down for you. For I know it is because of me that this great tempest has come upon you.
Jonah's refusal to obey God's call was so strong that he preferred death over preaching to Nineveh. He even asked to be thrown into the sea. The sailors, however, were reluctant to do so, fearing that they would be held responsible for his death and face divine retribution. Instead, they rowed desperately to reach land, but the storm was too fierce.
Yes. Their struggle to save Jonah reflects the broader truth. A person out of God's will can be a burden to others and even to themselves. Just as the sailors couldn't overcome the storm, the world often finds it impossible to help someone who is disobedient and out of alignment with their purpose.
Verse 14. Therefore they called out to the Lord, O Lord, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not on us innocent blood for you. O Lord, have done as it pleased you.
What they were essentially saying was, this is between you and Jonah, God. We don't want any part of it. Please don't hold this against us. They wanted to avoid the guilt of shedding innocent blood and decided to follow Jonah's instructions. So reluctantly, they had to cast him into the sea.
Verse 15. So they picked up Jonah and hurled him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. What a remarkable miracle.
Absolutely.
As soon as they threw Jonah into the sea, the storm ceased instantly. The sudden calm was a powerful testimony to Jehovah's work.
Now, verse 17. And the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights.
This is truly amazing because it signifies deliverance. God was determined to reach Jonah, and if he couldn't do it easily, he would do it the hard way.
In exploring the lives of prophets, Jonah's story stands out as both captivating and complex. Known as the reluctant missionary, Jonah's journey is a profound tale of divine pursuit and human struggle.
Despite receiving a clear call from God to deliver a message to the wicked city of Nineveh, Jonah's initial response was to flee in the opposite direction, seeking to escape his mission.
This flight led to a dramatic storm and Jonah being swallowed by a great fish, an event that signifies not just a miraculous intervention, but also a deep lesson in obedience and divine mercy. Jonah's story isn't just about his reluctance, it's a reflection of God's relentless pursuit and the profound impact of his grace.
As we turn to Jonah chapter 2, we enter a pivotal moment in his journey as it's here. Jonah's time in the belly of the fish becomes a place of reflection and transformation. It's in the dark and unlikely settings that Jonah's heart began to change, setting the stage for a remarkable shift in his mission and outlook.
Join us next time as we delve into chapter 2 and discover the profound lessons Jonah learned during the extraordinary period.
As always, thank you. Thank you for being with us today. We genuinely appreciate you and your support. If you haven't already, please click the like button and subscribe.
So, until next time,
Get connected
to go vertical. Bye-bye.